All right, diving in today with a deep dive you requested into Lisa Del Sierra.
Oh, yeah, this one's really interesting.
Yeah, a name you might not know off the top of your head, but
Yeah, but with a career spanning like over 268 adult films.
yeah, over 268 adult films.
Yeah, over 268 films. She also directed and produced.
And later became a nurse.
Yeah, a nurse. So definitely a story with some twists and turns.
Absolutely.
So let's start at the beginning. Del Sierra starts out at 18 as a go-go dancer and stripper in Bordeaux.
Right, and that was kind of a common entry point into the adult film industry back then.
I see.
And what's really interesting is that she wasn't even into pornography before she started working in the industry.
Oh,
It
wow.
wasn't a passion or anything, it was more like a chance encounter.
Yeah.
Someone saw photos of her in a magazine and gave her a call, and that was it. No formal casting or anything.
Wow, so she just kind of fell into it.
Yeah, pretty much.
But if she wasn't drawn to the industry itself, what made her say yes?
Well, she talks about needing money and seeing it as a job, a performance.
She even said she felt detached from the sexual aspect of it at first.
Almost like a separate persona for work.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating. What about her family? How did they react to her career choice?
She didn't tell them right away. It eventually came out, kind of like confirming something they'd already suspected.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they weren't exactly thrilled, but they were supportive in the end.
I can only imagine how difficult that conversation must have been. Though the story about her brother finding out through a friend at school who recognized her on Facebook, that's pretty funny.
It really is classic sibling rivalry. But it also shows how the internet can make it hard to separate public and private lives, especially for people in Del Sierra's line of work.
Very true. Okay, let's get into the industry itself. Del Sierra gives some behind-the-scenes insights that I think people are curious about.
For sure.
For example, how does the pay structure work? It's not a salary, right?
No, it's a per scene rate, starting at a minimum of 500 euros, which is interesting because it means performers have some control over their earnings based on what they're willing to do.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Exactly.
And what about all the rumors we've heard? Like the money shot.
Well, Del Sierra spills the tea on that one. For photos, they sometimes use Gaviscon to create the effect.
Really?
Yeah, because actors can't, perform on cue all day long.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's a practical solution, but it makes you wonder how much of what we see is real versus staged.
Right. It raises the whole question of authenticity in the industry.
Absolutely, and Del Sierra actually addresses that directly. For instance, Viagra use among male performers is actually discouraged in French productions.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, the idea is to encourage a more natural pace in performance.
Interesting.
Yeah, they prioritize realism over, well, enhancement.
Who knew?
Yeah, and what about female ejaculation? Is that as common as adult films make it seem?
Good point.
Del Sierra debunks that one too. She says that the infamous Fontaine isn't a universal experience for women.
Right,
It
yeah.
depends on various factors, just like any other aspect of human sexuality.
So a lot of what we see on screen is exaggerated or even fabricated.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
What about those outdoor scenes? I always assumed they were illegal.
Not necessarily. It comes down to permits and local regulations.
Sure.
Del Sierra doesn't get into specifics, but it suggests there's a level of legality and organization that we might not expect.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have to ask, what about odors on set? Del Sierra didn't shy away from that topic at all.
No, she didn't. And let's just say it's not always glamorous, but then again, that aligns with her overall message. This is a job, it's a business, and it's not always pretty.
Yeah, she also debunks the myth about women's sensitivity decreasing after years in the industry.
Right.
Her comparison to childbirth was pretty striking.
Yeah, a baby's head is a lot larger than anything else.
That's for sure. It's a great way to show that the female body is incredibly resilient and adaptable.
It really is.
So 4 years into her career, Del Sierra wins an X Award,
Wow.
which is a big deal in the industry.
Absolutely.
I imagine that comes with a lot of attention.
It does. She talks about being recognized by fans, sometimes in awkward situations, like a couple who had her calendar hanging in their bedroom.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, talk about dedicated fans. But it must be strange to be so recognizable for such a personal part of your life.
For sure. How did this all affect her personal relationships?
That's where things get complicated. Del Sierra admits that reconciling her professional and personal life was tough. It even impacted her own exploration of sexuality, which is kind of ironic, right?
It is.
Surrounded by sexuality at work, but personally, it was a different story.
Like her work became this separate entity that she couldn't integrate into her everyday life.
Exactly. And it wasn't until after she left the industry that she really started to explore her own desires and preferences. Which brings us to something she emphasizes throughout the interview, the importance of self-discovery and owning your choices.
Speaking of choices, let's talk about some of the specific scenes she describes, like the everything but scene, for example.
Right.
She was terrified at first, but ultimately found it to be a positive experience.
It shows her willingness to push her own boundaries.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, she refused to participate in the public disgrace category, drawing a line in the sand.
Good for her.
Hmm.
It shows that even within this industry, performers have agency and can choose what they're comfortable with.
It's about setting boundaries and staying true to yourself.
Exactly.
And then there's the story about the actor fainting during a scene in Miami because of the heat.
Oh, yeah.
Makes you realize that these films are made by real people and sometimes things don't go as planned.
It's a reminder that the fantasy we see on screen is just that, a fantasy.
That's a great point and a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive. Exploring the difference between the fantasy world of adult films and the reality of sex in real life.
I'm ready to dive in.
Stay tuned for part 2. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Lisa Del Sierra. We were just talking about the difference between the fantasy of adult films and, well, the reality of sex.
Right, and Del Sierra is really honest about that.
Yeah.
She gives some specific examples that are really fascinating.
Okay.
For instance, the average duration of sex in France is like 5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Really?
Yeah, compared to what you see in an adult film, there's a big disconnect.
That's for sure. It seems like they go on forever in those films.
That's part of creating the fantasy.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it's not just duration. Things like penis size, women faking satisfaction, using your phone during sex, even penis curvature, and the time it takes for men to regain an erection. They're all portrayed differently in films.
So it's like they're creating a different set of norms and expectations.
Exactly, and it makes you wonder about the impact on viewers.
Yeah.
You know, are we setting ourselves up for disappointment by comparing ourselves to these idealized versions?
That's a good question, one to think about for sure. But before we go too far down that road, let's get back to some of the behind-the-scenes details.
Okay.
What about condom use? Is that common in French productions?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's mandatory.
Hmm.
Unlike the U.S., where there's been more debate, French productions really prioritize safety.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they require condoms for all scenes.
And I imagine regular testing is crucial too, right?
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Del Sierra emphasizes that performers undergo thorough testing for STIs before every film.
Wow.
And the results have to be very recent, less than 14 days old.
So it's a pretty strict process.
It is very strict. It really challenges the idea that it's all just haphazard and unregulated.
Right. Okay, back to the technical side of things for a second. She mentioned something called a pussy light. What is that?
Well, it's basically a specialized lighting technique to highlight certain anatomical features.
Oh,
They
okay.
even have a dedicated crew member for it, the pussy lighter, which shows the level of detail and attention they put into the visuals.
Wow, talk about specialization.
Right.
What about sound? How do they capture, all the sounds?
They place microphones strategically, but Del Sierra admits they often have to re-record certain sounds later.
Especially the more enthusiastic ones.
Yeah, exactly.
So even the audio is carefully crafted.
It is. It's all about creating that heightened reality that viewers expect.
But even with all the technical details and behind-the-scenes stories, Del Sierra is clearly passionate about changing the overall perception of the industry.
She is.
That's where her documentary comes in, right?
Yes. She wants to present a more authentic, nuanced view of the industry, highlighting the professionalism, the camaraderie, even the humor that's there.
So it's about humanizing the people involved and challenging those negative stereotypes.
Exactly. And she's not just talking about the performers.
Right.
She wants to show everyone, the directors, the crew, everyone who makes it happen.
It makes you think about how we judge entire industries based on such limited information.
Right. And Del Sierra's documentary wants to challenge those assumptions, encourage a more open-minded perspective.
It's like she's saying, look beyond the label and see the humanity.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of challenging perceptions, there's this game that Del Sierra plays called Is It Porn?, where she shows photos and asks if they're from an adult film or not.
Oh, yeah, that's a really fun part.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so the first photo shows a muscular, shirtless guy with his back turned.
Okay, sounds like porn.
Right, most people would think so, but it's actually just a photo of a weightlifter.
Oh, wow.
It shows how quick we are to judge.
Makes you question those snap judgments for sure.
Yeah.
What else?
Then there's a photo of this stunningly beautiful woman, and Del Sierra says she's too beautiful for porn. which is interesting because she's kind of playing into a stereotype there.
Right.
But then she goes on to say that in her experience, the women who do well in the industry aren't always the most conventionally beautiful.
Okay.
It's more about charisma and confidence and a certain energy.
It's about owning your sexuality and being comfortable in your own skin.
Exactly. It's not just about looks. It's about performance.
Give me one more.
Okay, this one's a bit more unexpected. It's a close-up of a cow's udder.
Definitely not porn.
Unless there's a niche category I'm missing, right? But the point is, it throws people off.
She's playing with our expectations.
Exactly. And then to really drive it home, she shows a woman's feet in a very suggestive position.
Okay, and this one I asked porn.
It is, but the feet belong to a podiatrist, showing a treatment technique.
Another twist.
It just goes to show how context and perspective shape our understanding.
Yeah, and how easily we can jump to the wrong conclusion.
Right. It's a reminder that the world is full of surprises.
Now let's talk about a big shift in Del Sierra's personal life.
Okay.
She became a mother in 2021 and then again in 2022.
Wow, a whole new chapter.
It is, and it raises questions about how she reconciles her past with her present, especially when it comes to her kids.
That must be a difficult balance.
Right. How do you explain a career like that to your kids?
Well, Del Sierra's approach is to be open and honest, addressing it as it comes up.
I see.
She believes honesty and open communication are key.
It's about normalizing the conversation and breaking down the stigma.
Exactly. It's also about owning your choices and showing it's possible to grow and change throughout life.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From her early career to motherhood, from behind-the-scenes secrets to societal norms.
Yeah.
Lisa Del Sierra's story is really a testament to personal growth and the importance of embracing our own journeys.
It is. And there's still more to come.
There is.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve into Del Sierra's vision for the future of the industry and what she wants to achieve with her documentary.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've really been exploring Lisa Del Sierra's story, from her start as a go-go dancer to a successful career in adult films, her transition to nursing, and now back to the industry as a director and advocate.
It's pretty amazing, defying expectations and creating her own path.
Yeah, and in this final part, we're going to look into what she hopes to achieve in the future, especially her ambition to create a documentary that shows the adult film industry in a different way. You said earlier she wants to go beyond the sensationalism and look at the industry's complexity. What would that look like to her?
Well, she imagines a documentary that focuses on the people who work in the industry, their motivations, their struggles, and what they want to achieve. It's about moving past the stereotypes and seeing the people behind the scenes,
So focusing on their individual stories.
Exactly. Highlighting the diversity in the industry, all those different backgrounds and viewpoints that we don't usually see.
It's like she's saying, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, exactly. There's more to this industry and these people than we realize. And she's not just interested in the performers.
Right.
She wants to show everyone involved, the directors, the crew, the behind-the-scenes folks who make these films possible.
It's about recognizing the collaboration, the teamwork, the skills needed to make these productions.
Right. And by doing that, she hopes to challenge the idea that it's all just exploitation and superficiality. There's a craft, an art, a level of professionalism that deserves respect.
It's really interesting how this connects back to her own journey of reinvention. She didn't let her past define her, and she doesn't want others to be defined by their choices either.
It's a really powerful message of empowerment, of self-acceptance, recognizing that people can change, pursue different paths, and find satisfaction in unexpected ways.
And it's about respecting those choices, even if they're different from our own.
Absolutely. Embracing individuality, celebrating the variety of human experiences.
It seems like her documentary is an extension of that idea. Breaking down barriers, creating understanding.
It is. And it's a challenge to us, the viewers, to be more open-minded, to question what we think we know, and to look beyond labels.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Lisa Del Sierra's life and work, what are some key takeaways that you, the listener, can think about?
Well, I think Del Sierra's story is a reminder that there's always more to learn, to discover about ourselves and the world around us. Don't be afraid to question assumptions, challenge stereotypes, and look for diverse perspectives.
And everyone has a story, right? Sometimes they're messy, sometimes they're surprising, and sometimes they challenge us.
But it's in those stories where we connect, find understanding, and maybe even see a bit of ourselves.
That's a great way to put it. So to close things out, I want to leave you with this. What other misconceptions might we have about the world? What other industries or communities do we think we know, but could benefit from a closer look, a deeper understanding.
That's worth thinking about.
It is. And it's something Lisa Del Sierra's story encourages us to do, to explore and to answer with open minds and hearts. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.